to the first episode of making a sort of a game in Unity. Now, I'll be going into the basics of how everything works and just, getting started with programming in general. Now, before we start off, I want to mention that instead of hopping just full on programming and nothing else, I decided I'm not going to do that because as a starter, I know how difficult it is to have to create your own graphics in a game because it has a lot of issues like the shapes and stuff like that and implementing those graphics, so it's not easy. But in Unity, unlike other programming languages which are just raw, Unity is a game engine which allows you to create graphics in a matter of clicks really, which is going to be super useful for you as a beginner or even as an advanced user, because if you're working on a deadline, it's going to be really nice to be able to quickly create graphics. Now, with that, let's get into it. So what we want to first do is Unity will look something like this when you first open it. Not exactly like this, but something along these lines. For example, you're not going to have these two folders on the bottom. I have this for later use. And you might have your menus differently. Now the first thing I want to focus on is just setting up the main scene menu over here. So if you have a game menu on the top, great. But if you do not, you want to click Window and Game. Well, I have one and you should have one too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my mouse button over it. I'm holding my left button. I haven't released it and I want to start dragging it, and I want to drag it to here on the right. And I want to release. Now you'll see that my game menu is over the top. And not only does it look smart and cooler, but I can quickly toggle between these menus. I just like to keep it so that the game menu is a bit smoother. Now with that said, let's just straight up set up a scene for ourselves and then start programming some basic movement. So the first thing you want to do is you want to hire over this thing called your hierarchy. So just like in any normal sort of realistic hierarchy, things are higher and things are lower. But unlike normal ones, if it's higher, it's not going to be in a different sort of layer or power. So it doesn't matter if I put this light under the camera. It doesn't make a difference. But don't do that. So what we're going to do first is we're going to right click on our hierarchy, hit 3D object and select plane. And I'm going to hover over the scene, not the game view, the scene view. I'm just going to press F and that's going to give me like a nice angle of this plane. Next what I'm going to do is over my scene view, I'm going to hold right click to enable move around mode. I can look around now, and with the WASD keys I can navigate my way around. So now I have a way to move around my scene, which is really cool. So the first thing you want to do is when you select your plane, you'll see that you have a transform component on the right hand side. It contains the position, rotation and scale of your object. Set the X and the Z axes to 10 so that you have a bit of a bigger sort of floor to work with. But you can experiment around with whatever you want. Doesn't make a difference. Unselect that, just click any spare space and your thing should stay as it is. Now, the next thing you want to do is you want to create a 3D object, which is a sphere. Hover over the scene view, press F, and you'll focus on that sphere. And I'm just using the scroll wheel to scroll back, and I just want to move my sphere just above my plane. And I press F again. So you'll see that the sphere comes with the exact same position, rotation, and scale items. However, what I'm just going to do to the sphere for now is I'm just going to change its name over here to player. And what I'm going to do with the plane is I'm going to change it to floor. Now trust me, if you think not naming your object is naming your object is unimportant, you're wrong. When you're working on huge projects, naming your objects is going to save you probably hours, if anything, of just looking through objects, square. So don't do that. Name all your objects, player and floor. Now, before we even focus on any sort of angles and stuff, let's just get into programming, I guess. So what you want to do is you want to go down to your project file over here, and you want to right click and select create C# script. You'll see it right here. Now, I know you can create JavaScript, but as a beginner, I did JavaScript as a beginner, and I didn't do Unity, I did raw JavaScript, just straight up raw. And it was tough. I don't know if in Unity JavaScript is easier, because I mastered C# ever since, and C# has been the thing I've been using for a long time. Now what you want to do is you want to hit it and click and name it movement, and then hit enter, and you want And obviously it's going to be like, oh, that already exists, because I already have a movement script over here. So I'm going to rename mine. Just name your one, enter. Movement. So once again, don't delete yours. I just deleted mine. But once again, what you do is you create a C# script. I'm just going to call it movement1. Oh, I am very dumb. Sorry about that. Movement1. There we go. That's what I'm going to call it. And what you want to do, once your script is created, you want to hit enter and then double click the script to open it in something called Visual Studio. Now, Visual Studio is this sort of IDE. IDE is like something which IDEs you can program in. Now, hopefully when you open it, if it doesn't open in Visual Studio, it will open it in a different type of programming software. Just try and install Visual Studio, and I will do a guide later on how to implement Visual Studio if you're having this privilege. But for most people, you should have Visual Studio. Now, you'll be greeted by this absolutely beautiful menu, and it will come with two functions: start and update. Start meaning that when your script turns on, it will instantly execute or run everything in between this little sort of like symbol and this one. These are curly brackets. And then for the update, it's the same thing, but instead of when your script starts, it calls it every single frame after your script starts. So you want to get rid of this // over here and // over here. These are just comments, unnecessary, they do nothing. So if I make a bit of space, I don't like to, I sort of get claustrophobia when I'm writing it and there's just one line. So I like to space my things out. You might not like to do that. You could have your own way of doing it. It's honestly your thing. Now what I'm quickly going to do is I'm just going to make sure that my cursor is being captured. There we go, it is. Just because there was issues with my cursor not being captured. But now it is, so that's fine. Now, let's actually get into writing our code. So what you want to do first is you want to make some space above your start method. Above, not inside, but above. Because we are going to declare something called variables. Variables are things that can change and do not stay the same. Now, in programming, they can stay the same if you want them to, but most of the time you don't want your variables to stay the same. Now, with that said, let's get into programming. So you want to type in public. What this means is it can be used by any other scripts. This will come in super useful later on in the series. Next, we're going to type in vector3. A vector3 is just very simply a variable that can take in 3 numbers. So it hoards 3 numbers instead of 1. And you can call it anything. I am going to call it LOC for this video, standing for location, and I recommend you do the same. Now you want to do a semicolon, and that will end your line. Next you want to press enter. Oops, don't put that symbol there. I put it there by accident. Next you want to go public. Once again, you know what public is. And you want to type transform. Now remember, every item has a transform. Position, rotation, and scale. So the same thing is done here. We want to receive the player's transform because we want to update the transform. If you want to change anything in your game, you need to mention that thing so you can change it. So we want to call it public transform. And once again, you can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call this transform player. And I'm going to put a semicolon at the end. Next, I'm going to type in public, once again, float. Now float means decimal number. Any decimal number is a float. And I'm going to call that x, and I'm going to do is equal to 0. And I'm going to type 0f, because after declaring a float, you want to just put an f after each number. I don't know why, that's just the way you do it. If you don't put an f, it starts to complain and have issues. So always put an f after floats, never put an f after ints. Now just to save time, I'm going to copy and paste this, and I'm going to go boom, boom. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it to x, y, and z. Now, I'm going to hit Ctrl and S, or I can just go to File and Save. There should be a save somewhere here. Save all, or Save Assets. So that's what you want to do, Ctrl S. But, yeah, Ctrl S is just much cooler and it makes you sound smart. Now, you're pretty much done declaring your variables at the top. Now we actually need to make our player move. Now, programming is great in C# because if you have a basic understanding of the English language, it is so much easier. So we're gonna type in player because we called our transform on the top player. So we are telling the game that we're about to update the player's transform. And I'm gonna type player.transform just because you just need to type it. I don't even know why. That's just the way I learned it. Dot position. So you want to make sure it knows that you're updating the position, not the scale, not the rotation. And you want to type that in. It's equal to lock. Because keep in mind, location holds 3 numbers. And those 3 numbers are going to be our x, y, and z. So if we make the position equal to x, y, and z, then we can just change the number x to whatever we want, and then the player will be changed to whatever we want. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, I'm sorry. And now we know that the player's transform is equal to lock. But how do we make it so that lock is equal to x, y, and z? Because currently lock doesn't know that it needs to be equal to x, y, and z. For all it knows, it could be any number in the world. So what we're going to do is we're going to type LOC equals new vector 3 open brackets x, space, y, space, z. And you're going to put a semicolon at the end of everything. And also make sure you have a closing bracket. That would suck if you didn't. Now I'm going to save it again. Saving is a good habit. If your program crashes, then it's good to have a save. Next, what I'm going to type in is an if statement. So if statements allow you to give them a condition, and if that condition is met, it will run a certain command. So what I'm going to type in is if space, open comma, input, capital I by the way, dot, get key. Now, you'll see that it recommends this get key down function. Don't use get key down. Get key down means every time the key is pressed. But the reason that's not good for us is because if I hold down W, it will only move forward once, and I will need to spam the button W, like W let go, to move forward a little bit. However, with get key, I can just hold down W and it will work. So for movement, you want that. Get key and brackets key code dot W, and make sure your capitalization is the same as mine. So if I put a capital letter, I want you to put a capital letter. And then I want to do a curly bracket, which you should locate on your keyboard quite easily. It's usually around the enter button somewhere. And a close bracket will automatically either be put there or you need to put it there. Now, anything I put between these 2 brackets are going to be run if I hold down the W key. So what do I want to do? I want to move my player forward. But which way is forward is the question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this, head back to Unity, and I'm going to select my player, and I'm going to select my camera, and I'm going to hit reset transform. So I'm just going to right click the transform, I'm going to hit reset, and I'm going to select the player, I'm going to click reset on that transform as well. So now you'll see that the player and the camera are in the exact same location. So now what I want to do is I want to go back to my hierarchy, and I want to drag my main camera onto the player, not under the player, onto the player, just like so. And when I release, you'll see that the camera will be placed on the player. And the reason this is great is because now if I move my player, the camera moves with it. So now they move together. Unless I have my camera selected. I can still move my camera individually. Ctrl Z to undo, or Ctrl Z if you're American. But now I can move my sphere forwards and backwards. Because forwards is always the way that your camera's pointing. For now, that is. So what I want to do is so this will be changed in the future, but for this basic movement, what I want to do is I just want to move my player forward, and in the transform, look what happens to the Z. I can see that Z gets 1 added to it, and if I move it backwards, Z gets taken away. So I know that to move forward, I need to do Z plus 1. But moving it forward 1 would actually make it teleport forward. So what you actually want to do is Z equals Z plus 0.1 F. Keep in mind it's a float, so you need to put an F after. Now, to actually save us time, what we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste this script 4 times. So the if statement. But we're going to change it a little bit. So WASD. Now S is going to be backwards. So what I'm going to do is I know that to go forwards I need to add one. So to go backwards I need to take away one. That's easy, right? But then what do I do to move left and right? Well, go back to Unity, move the player left, and see what happens. We get one taken away from X when we move it left. And because we want the player to press A to move left, we're simply just going to replace the Z with X and X again, and it's going to be take away from X. And we're going to do the same thing for D, but instead of taking away, you guessed it, we add to X. And when I hit Ctrl S, that's done. However, you'll instantly start to see a problem with this. Now, when I start my game, nothing will happen. I can spam WASD all I want. You'll see that my player isn't moving a millimeter. And there's a reason for that. Yes, I told the movement script to move an object, but it doesn't know which object is the player. So what I want to do is I want to hold it, I want to drag it onto my player, not the camera, you want to drag it onto the player. And now when I select the player, you'll see it says movement 1 bracket script. Now, the first thing you'll see is their location has X, Y, and Z on it, right? And then I can add to X, and even though it doesn't show up, it just added to the X over there as well. Now, the first thing you'll want to do is you'll see player non brackets transform. So that's very simple. You just want to drag the transform of the player. So now it knows which object is the player, which object are you updating the transform on. And next, what you want to do is you want to select the start location. So let's say I want the current position to be the start. Now, before I even do anything, I just want to show you the problem. If I run the script now, it will teleport the player to the position 0000 because that's the position I want him to be on. But you see, I don't want him to get teleported to 000. So I'm going to stop my game. It will undo everything that happened. And I'm going to copy the X where I want him. So I want him to start in this X. I want him to start in this Y. And I want him to start in this Z. And now if I start the game, you'll see he doesn't move. He stays there. Now if I press W, you'll see he's moves forward. S, A, and oops, we made a mistake on A. See, A for some reason is updating Z, and I'll check why that is in a second. And D is also moving it forward. So we did a issue in the code. Alright, I have located the issue. So the code is perfectly fine. However, I did not press Ctrl S. Remember, you have to save your script if you want it to change in your game. So now if I start my game, I pressed Ctrl S on the script. So now you can see I can move forward, backward, left and right, and it's all fine. A, D, W, and S. But you can't actually see it moving. Now, you may be wondering, why can't I see it moving? I mean, isn't my player moving and isn't the camera moving? Well, yes it is. Now you see if I move to the edge, now you can see it moving forward and backwards. But because everything looks the same, you can't tell that it's moving. So, just to prove to you that it really is moving, if I add a cube somewhere in the scene, like over here, now if I make my game start and I move my player around, you can see that he is indeed moving. And so that will do it for the movement guide. I will get into moving your mouse in the next one, but till then, see you in a bit.